The independent commission investigating the mass shootings in Lewiston last year released its final report yesterday.
While the report makes no recommendations, it does say local police and the Army Reserve missed several opportunities to potentially stop the deadly shootings.
Keenan Mills was at Lewiston City Hall for the report's release and has more.
Robert Card is totally responsible for his own conduct, solely responsible. He caused the deaths and injuries inflicted that night. We will never know if he might still have committed a mass shooting, even if someone had managed to remove his firearms before October 25th.
Last November, an independent commission was formed by Governor Mills to investigate the timelines of events leading up to the horrific incidents that took place on October 25th. Since then, they have held 16 public hearings, several private sessions, and have heard from survivors and other involved parties before releasing their final document Tuesday morning. The 215-page report states both Robert Card's Army Reserve Unit and the Saginaw County Sheriff's Office had opportunities that could have prevented the largest mass shooting in the state's history.
First, the commission affirms what it laid out in its interim report issued last March. The Saginaw County Sheriff's Office had sufficient probable cause to take Card into protective custody under Maine's yellow flag law. The Sheriff's Office is justified in pointing out that the Army Reserve did not share all the relevant information it had about Card's behavior.
Also in attendance were attorneys working for over 90 family members of survivors and victims impacted by the shooting.
From our perspective as the attorneys representing the families affected by this mass shooting, it's really quite simple. It's a simple formulation, which is a diagnosed psychosis plus possession of numerous assault weapons requires action.
On behalf of the clients that we represent, this will come and be profoundly upsetting and saddening for them to learn that this could have and should have been prevented.
Commission Chair Daniel Wathen defended the panel's decision to avoid making recommendations, saying it's up to others to implement changes based on the report. A link to the full report can be found on our website. Keenan Mills, WABI TV 5 News, Lewiston.